It's a real thing. If you wanted to go check it out, you can go on the dark web. You can go see it.
So
it's just
we're not promoting that, though, right?
well, yeah.
We're not telling
my lawyers
you
have,
to get on
my
the dark
lawyers have
web.
told me that don't go.
So the question for the day, Travis, is what is a hacker exactly? On our previous podcast, we talked a little bit about hacking. Are small businesses vulnerable to that? So we want to define that term.
Okay, so in the news, let me say this. I think it's different things depending on who you're asking and what the context is. But in the news, generally speaking, we're talking about criminals, right? People who are using computers to gain unauthorized access to other computers or ultimately to files, to data. And the key word there is it's unauthorized access. And I think even legally, that's what's important, is that the access that you're gaining was nobody approved it. Nobody said you could be here and you could do these things, which also means that sometimes you yourself could be hacking if you're not careful in a legal sense. But I want to point out that that is just one definition of hacking. There are several different definitions, and I think there's more accurate ways to describe what hacking is than just the criminal piece.
Okay. So a hacker isn't necessarily just one guy, cloaked in a hoodie in a dark room staring at a computer screen like we often see.
Blasting techno music while he hacks the Gibson. Yeah, it can be that, if that's how you want to dress and how you want to do, break the law but no, it's not just that. Generally speaking, though, again, in the news, it is going to be criminal activity. But I think it was like most people probably don't know who this is, but Richard Stallman, he's kind of a well-known individual in the free or open source, I should say, software world. I believe he defined a hacker as, someone with playful curiosity, who's, expressing that sort of playful curiosity through computers. But really what hacking is finding vulnerabilities, workarounds, things that you can exploit in systems, imperfections essentially, and using those vulnerabilities or imperfections to either gain access but really just make something do something it was not intended to do, or make something work in a way that it wasn't intended to work. So, if you're using these imperfections to get around, maybe security is a good thing. A good example, normally a piece of software was written in such a way that it requires you to put in a username and a password, but you found a way to not have to do that. That's hacking, because you really are finding these workarounds. And again, I should say it's computer hacking, because people hack other things. It's not just computers that you can hack with, right? You can go on YouTube right now and they'll give you an army of videos. It's like 100 different ways to hack your life. The idea is you found a secret, you found a workaround.
Okay, gotcha. So that's a good segue into the next question then, because thinking about finding a workaround for something may kind of, elicit these images of doing something that you're not supposed to be doing. But when we think about life hacks and that type of thing, a lot of times that's something helpful. So are all hackers bad?
Right. Again, if you listen to the news, you might think that all hackers are bad. But no, most of the people who are trained and skilled in this area, who know how to do these things, most of them are good people. They have jobs doing this. They're actually security researchers. They're people who are actually trying to find and test out these vulnerabilities and then report them, disclose them ethically before somebody who is a criminal finds them. And it's actually a really incredibly important role in our society now, since we depend so much on computers, to have these individuals who find this problem first, report the problem back to the manufacturer, give the manufacturer time to fix it before it comes out. And we refer to that as white hat hacking. You may have heard of like white hat, gray hat, black hat. Well, white hat is going to be these people who are paid or choose to take their time and invest it in finding these problems, and then importantly, they do a thing called ethical disclosure, which is the way that they report that information so that it doesn't, they don't create a whole problem themselves by reporting it and then making everybody aware of it, including the criminals.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that kind of answers that next question, because those are terms that we hear a lot: white hat hackers, black hat hackers. Especially in the movies, we see that terminology quite a bit. So generally speaking, white hat hacker is doing something positive, and then black hat hacker is doing something that they shouldn't be doing.
Maybe it's not necessarily that what they're doing is bad, it's how they're doing it, right? So white hat hacking is an above the board, by the books way of doing things. Black hat means it's not, right? You're not doing things necessarily legally, but it doesn't mean that the thing you're doing is harmful. You just might be hacking in such a way that if you did get caught, you would go to jail. Doesn't mean that your intent, what you're going to do with the information you're gathering, with what you're learning, is to actually cause harm, but you are definitely going about it in such a way that it is a crime. Gray hat is a term that comes up, which is that questionable realm, right? Where are you in the clear, or maybe you are implementing some things that might actually ultimately turn out not to be above board. But again, it's gray hat. It's your intention, again, probably positive. You're probably trying to do something good, but maybe your methods aren't the most above board. That having been said, the majority of people who I think you would hear referred to as black hat hackers probably are, in most cases, the reason they're taking those methods that are not above board is because what they're trying to do is actually break the law, because there really isn't a need to do things that way unless you are trying to do something nefarious.
Who can a hacker be? Can it be, it can be an individual, as you mentioned, but when we hear about these big hacks in the news, like the Colonial Pipeline, or T-Mobile, or something big, is it one guy, sitting with a bag of hot Cheetos, just hacking away, or what are we looking at?
Yeah, no. So I think in that case, that was a group with Colonial Pipeline. There are different groups of hackers out there. A lot of times, let me say this too. A lot of times these criminal organizations have like nations behind them, or at least, it's believed to be that, right? That they are actually state sponsored in some cases, or at least are being allowed to operate with the protections of certain states, right? I guess that's what state sponsored is. But they're generally not one person. We're talking about a group of individuals who are working together on those bigger hacks to try to find a way into those organizations, and then working together to cover their tracks. It can be a single individual who's doing this. It's definitely, that does happen. Some of the bigger, more historical hacks, like from a long time ago, happened by one individual. Kevin Mitnick is like a great example. He's probably one of the most famous, hackers, because he got started so early. I think he got into NORAD. He got into some places he shouldn't have. He stole some stuff from Pac Bell, I think. And I forget the company that he hit. It was like in '89. He hit a company that actually got him arrested. But so in his case, it was one person. But generally speaking, these big hacks are teams of individuals, because there's a lot of sophistication going on these days with hacks. A lot of these things, these big ones you hear about, are very sophisticated attacks. But let me say this: that said, when it comes to like your small business getting hacked, a lot of that stuff, while it might also be a team of people, you can actually go onto the dark web and you can buy sort of pre-exploited companies. People will go out there and they'll get a foothold, like a persistent foothold in your organization, and they'll go get a persistent foothold maybe in a couple other organizations. Then they'll go on the dark web and they'll sell it. They'll say like, hey, so I've got a persistent foothold in this accounting firm's, network. And is there anybody out there who wants to buy it from me? And then the person who buys it is the one who actually does the attacking. So even in that case, is it one person? Well, maybe it's one person who got in, but then it's another whole different person who's actually going to drop malware or some sort of, crypto virus on your system. And again, that person who's doing that may not have even bought the virus. They, again, may not have written the virus. They bought it on the dark web. They buy the foothold, they go buy the virus. It's like ransomware for hire. And this is really happening. It's a real thing. If you wanted to go check it out, you can go on the dark web, you can go see it.
So
it's just,
we're not promoting that though, right?
well, yeah.
We're not telling you to go get on
my
the
lawyers
dark
have
web.
told me that, don't go. But I kid you not. When you get there, it's like eBay, and then you buy these things with Bitcoin. It's that easy now. And I don't think a lot of people understand this. I really do think a lot of people think like that it is that one lone wolf, who's in a basement somewhere and he's after you. This can be, an enterprising, 12-year-old who decided he wants to make $10,000 in Bitcoin and he's got nothing to lose. So he does it. Unfortunately, it's so commoditized now. That's why it is such a real threat.
Let's talk a little bit about, we talked about individuals hacking. We talked about organizations. What about, and I know you did cover this a little bit with the talking about making purchases online of algorithms or whatnot, but bots. That's something that we've heard as well.
Yes.
Bots or not actual individuals or, humans at all that are physically sitting there hacking into an organization. Can you tell us about that? And also, I guess that would kind of lead into another topic, which is sort of what we discussed in one of our other podcasts is, if these are bots doing it, then obviously they're not directly targeting you as a individual or as a business. Can you kind of get into that a little bit more?
Yeah. Yeah. I think we did talk about it a little bit on another podcast, but yeah, the gist is, even though it might be an individual initially setting that bot up, for the people who don't know what that bot's just short for robot, right? So that's what essentially what it means is there's some software somewhere that's doing repetitive actions over and over again, and it's not a human doing them. So this could be scanning open ports on firewalls on the internet, looking for different IP addresses, again, that are public facing IPs that have vulnerabilities that are exposed, right? And they're looking for these things to say, like, can I get in here? Can I get in there? A great example of this is if you get a Windows server and you put it directly on the internet, you don't put any security in place. You just take especially if you take like an old one, like an old Windows 2003 or something server, you put it right on the internet. That thing will be compromised within the hour. Like it'll be hacked. If it goes 24 hours, that's amazing, because there's all these bots, these, programs out there that are running that are just looking and they're just waiting to see, like, is there a server, Windows Server 2003 that's out there? Because there's been so many vulnerabilities that have been discovered in that environment that are still there because that version of the software is no longer updated. So, so is it a person? Is it a human? Is it thoughtful? No, there's a lot of people who are leveraging automation. They're leveraging software, and they're using that to do all that tedious, like, heavy lifting for them. Spam, right? Sending emails, phishing attacks. That's another big one. Now, is that a person who's saying, yeah, I'm going to get Robert. I'm going to get him. I'm going to send him an email. Well, it can be. That's called spear phishing. That's when somebody is directly targeting you. But phishing, regular old phishing, no, that's a bot. That's a piece of software that's sending the same kind of email to as many people as possible. It's even scraping. It's scraping the email addresses from LinkedIn or from websites, and then it's making a list of those email addresses. Then it's putting the payload in, sending it all out, and then once they get somebody, it's like dragnet phishing, right? Once it gets something, it's like, oh, cool, and then a human gets involved. But yeah, so much of what goes on is passive.
So let's summarize this really quickly, as we do
Sure.
with each one of our podcasts. 30 seconds or less. What or who exactly is a hacker?
Okay. Most of the time on the news, a hacker is a criminal. That's what it means, right? But really, we're talking about people who enjoy computers and they enjoy finding vulnerabilities in those computers and those systems, and they enjoy exploiting them. Sometimes to make the world safer, sometimes to steal and make money illicitly.